If you are a beginner and scared of using a sewing machine, this video is for you. Today I'll explain the parts of sewing machine, how to thread it, how to use the pedal, and how to start stitching confidently. First, let's get familiar with the parts. Hand wheel turns the needle manually. Needle does the stitching. Pressure foot holds fabric in place. Pressure foot lever lifts and lowers the foot. Needle plate, it's a metal plate with measurement lines. Thread tension dial controls tightness of stitch. Stitch selector or length dial. Bobbin and bobbin case. Spool pin holds top thread. You don't need to remember everything at once, just get familiar. When you're using an industrial straight stitch machine, the foot pedal is the part that usually scares beginners the most. But honestly, it's much simpler than it looks. The pedal only controls the speed of the machine, not the stitch quality. So the harder you press it, the faster the machine runs. You don't need to press it fully at all. In fact, the most of the time you'll only use the front part of your foot and apply very little pressure. Think of it like slowly accelerating a scooter rather than suddenly reviving it. Always keep your heel relaxed and your toes on the pedal so you have control. When you're starting out, it's a very good idea to practice pressing the pedal without any fabric, just to understand how sensitive it is. Industrial machines are powerful, so even a small press can move fast. Slow stitching is actually better and cleaner, so don't worry about the speed. Focus on the control. Once you get comfortable, your foot will naturally learn how much pressure is needed, and you won't even think about it anymore. Winding the bobbin properly is extremely important on an industrial machine because if the bobbin is not winded evenly, it can cause tension problem while stitching. To wind the bobbin, first place your thread spool on the spool stand and bring the thread through the bobbin winding guide. Then wrap it around the empty bobbin a few times by hand so it doesn't slip. Place the bobbin on the bobbin winder spindle and push it to the side to engage it. When you press the foot pedal slowly, the bobbin will start winding. Always wind at medium speed, not too fast, so the thread spreads evenly across the bobbin. And make sure the foot is up. If the thread starts piling up on one side, stop and adjust it with your fingers. The bobbin should be full, not too tight or overfilled. Once it's done, cut the thread and remove the bobbin. A neatly winded bobbin makes stitching smooth and trouble-free, so this step is worth taking your time with. Threading an industrial machine looks complicated at first because there are more guides. But once you understand the flow, it becomes very easy. The most important thing to remember before threading is to always lift the pressure foot. This opens the tension disc so the thread can sit properly inside them. Start by placing the thread cone on the spool stand and bring the thread through the first guide at the top. Then follow the threading path down through the tension unit. From there, bring the thread up through the take-up lever. This step is crucial because the take-up lever controls how the stitch forms. After that, guide the thread back down through the remaining thread guides near the needle bar, and finally thread the needle from front to back. Take your time here and make sure the thread is not twisted or skipping any guide, because even one missed point can affect your stitchings. For industrial machines, the bobbin usually sits inside a metal bobbin case that goes into the hook area under the needle plate. When you insert the bobbin into the bobbin case, the direction of the thread is very important. The thread should come out smoothly and pass through the slit under the tension spring of the bobbin case. When you pull the thread, it should move freely but not feel loose. If it drops too easily, the tension is too less. If it doesn't move at all, it's too tight. Once the bobbin is correctly placed in the case, insert the bobbin case into the machine until you hear a soft click, which means it's locked in properly. After both the top thread and the bobbin are in place, you need to bring the bobbin thread up before you start stitching, and this step is often skipped by beginners. Hold the top thread gently with your left hand and slowly turn the hand wheel towards you with your right hand. As the needle goes down and comes back up, it will catch the bobbin thread and form a small loop. Pull the top thread slightly and the bobbin thread will come up through the needle plate. Use your fingers or a small tool to pull the bobbin thread out fully, then bring both threads to the back of the pressure foot. This prevents the thread from tangling when you start sewing and give you a clean start. In an industrial straight stitch machine, needle placement is extremely important because even a small mistake here can cause skipped stitches, thread breaking, or fabric damage. When inserting the needle, always make sure the machine is switched off and the needle bar is at its highest position. Loosen the needle clamp screw slightly, then insert the needle all the way up until it stops. This part is important because if the needle is not fully inserted, the hook wouldn't catch the thread properly. On most industrial straight stitch machine, the flat side of the needle faces one specific direction, usually towards the right side or back, depending on the model, and the curved side faces the hook. The easiest way to remember this is to look at where your needle gets threaded from. The thread always goes into the long groove side of the needle, Once the needle is in correctly, tighten the screw firmly but not aggressively. A correctly placed needle makes stitching smooth and clean. Reverse stitching is used to lock your stitches at the beginning and end so they don't come undone later. On an industrial straight stitch machine, this is usually done using a reverse lever or reverse button near the needle area. To reverse stitch, start stitching forward for 2 or 3 stitches, then gently press the reverse lever and stitch backward over the same line for another 2 or 3 stitches. Release the lever and continue stitching forward as normal. At the end of the seam, repeat the same process. Stitch forward a little, reverse back, and then stop. You don't need to reverse stitch for a long distance. Just a few stitches are enough. Beginners often hold the reverse lever too long, which creates a messy stitch buildup. And also, you don't need to pull the fabric back. The machine will feed it by itself. The pressure foot is what holds your fabric down when the feet dog move it forward, and using the right foot can make sewing much easier. Industrial straight stitch machine commonly come with a standard straight stitch foot, which is perfect for most sewing, especially for beginners. Other commonly used feet include the zipper foot for sewing close to edge, a piping foot for cord, and a hemming foot for clean edges. To change the pressure foot, always turn off the machine, lift the pressure foot lever, and loosen the pressure foot screw using a screwdriver. Remove the current foot, place the new one aligned with the needle hole, and tighten the screw securingly. After changing the foot, always turn the hand wheel once manually to ensure the needle does not hit the foot before you start stitching. Thread breaking is one of the most common beginner problem, and most of the time it happens because of the incorrect threading or tension issues. If the top thread keeps breaking, stop immediately and rethread the machine with the pressure foot lifted. Make sure the thread passes through every guide properly. Also check that the needle is not bent or damaged, because a bad needle can shred thread very quickly. Fabric getting stuck or pulled into the needle blade usually happens when the pressure foot is not lowered before stitching, or when you start sewing too close to the fabric edge. Always lower the pressure foot before pressing the pedal, and for very thin fabric, start sewing slightly away from the edge or use a scrap fabric as support. Skipping stitches is almost always a needle problem. Either the needle is inserted incorrectly, the wrong needle size is being used for the fabric, or the needle is blunt. Changing to a new needle and checking the needle direction solves the problem most of the time. Bird nesting. That messy bunch of thread under the fabric looks scary, but it's actually very easy to fix. It usually happens when the top thread is not seated correctly in the tension disc, or when you start sewing without pulling both thread to the back. Always rethread the machine properly, hold the thread tail for the first few stitches, and check that the tension is balanced. Always practice on a scrap fabric before sewing your actual project, especially when adjusting tension or changing thread. Change your needle frequently. A dull needle can damage fabric and cause multiple stitching problems. Don't pull the fabric while sewing, let the machine feed it naturally. Clean lint from the bobbin area often because industrial machines run fast and collect dust quickly. And most importantly, don't rush. Neat sewing always comes from slow and controlled stitching. I am not pulling or adjusting the fabric here, the machine itself is feeding it. Look at the stitches, it's straight and clean. When you're stitching with a small fabric, the machine will itself stitch in a straight line. You don't have to rush. Adjust the fabric only when it's a heavy or long material. If you're new to sewing, remember that every expert once struggled with threading, needles, and tangled threads. It's completely normal. Take your time, practice slowly, and don't be scared of making mistakes because that's how you learn. If this video helped you understand your sewing machine better, like, share, and comment below with your doubts or what you like to learn next. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.